I find that I'm inspired by the unknown. For some of you, you may be like, oh, I'm uninspired by the unknown. But I find that the unknown is intriguing. And I'm going to tell you a story about the unknown. So I'm going to leave out dates. I'm going to leave out some names and even specific locations just for people's safety. But this story comes from China. One of the reasons China, just in general, is intriguing to me and has been a great experience in my life is the unknowns. So we were taken by train to a city, and on that train with me was my team and myself, a group of people that were in China for the purpose of delivering Bibles. That in itself is a bit of an unknown. As an American, Bibles are plentiful. They're on our bookshelves. They're readily available in stores. We can order them online. There's just no reason not to have Bibles, right? Unless you just choose not to. So the need for Bibles was an unknown. There was a desperate need for Bibles. There still is in China. You've got thousands of people every day being born again in China. If you're a new believer, you need what? You need a Bible. How are you going to learn? How are you going to grow? They needed Bibles. So here we are. We're in China. We're Americans, and we're used to Bibles being plentiful, and yet we're in a country where Bibles are desperately needed and difficult to obtain. And so we're on this train, and we're taken to a major city, and we're carrying Bibles for the purpose of delivery to Chinese believers. So we arrive in this major city, and through our contacts and our call them a host, we're taken to hotels and given really very nice accommodations to reside in during our stay in this Chinese city. By the way, if you don't have a cup of coffee or something, feel free to get one while you push pause for a moment and come back to this video. So we spend the night in what are very reasonable accommodations. We didn't really ever suffer in China for lack of comfortable and decent accommodations, as well as really very good food. There were just very few times that I felt like we were not cared for well in those arenas as we traveled and ventured around China. The unknowns, the unknowns of Bibles, the unknowns of what would happen should we get caught with the Bibles. Even more critically important is the unknowns of what would happen to the Chinese people if we were caught delivering Bibles to them. These were all unknowns. And it seemed like every time we went to China, things were different. So this time was different and had some unknowns. We're delivered to this major city. We spend the night in comfortable accommodations, as I just described. And the next day, guess what we did? You probably didn't guess this. We acted like tourists. Yeah, I mean, it was great because we're in a culture where there's much to explore and there's much to see. And yes, our main purpose is there to deliver Bibles, but that has to be done quite covertly. And consequently, we're acting like tourists and we're going around and we're seeing sights, and they're amazing. I really should shoot some videos just about some of the amazing sights we've seen in China and other parts of the world. But for this video, I want to talk to you about those Bibles that we brought to this major city. What did we do with those? And we spend our day enjoying great sights, enjoying good food, acting like tourists. It gets towards evening, and we're taken back to our hotel, and we're given a briefing. And in that briefing, we are told that what's going to happen is we're going to take these Bibles to a location where they will be stockpiled, and that while we are in process that evening of taking these Bibles to that location, and I'm going to describe that process to you here in just a second, because that was an amazing experience. The process of taking these Bibles from the hotel to the place where they were going to be stored. But let me finish with the briefing. So in this briefing, they tell us that as we are in that evening doing the job of moving the Bibles from our hotel rooms to the storage place, that people were in other parts of China already on trains making their way to this major city where they would be for the purpose of going to the storehouse, collecting these Bibles and taking them deeper into China and actually delivering them to churches and consequently to believers in places where they needed them and were requesting them. It's almost like they were placing orders as best they could and saying, hey, this is what we need. And so we were participating in that process, which was such an unknown, such an unfamiliar thing. And in this briefing, they continue to describe that what we want you to do is in pairs of twos and threes, they divided us up. And you would individually, in those small groups, we were given a business card that had the name of a flower shop on it. And we were to go down in pairs or triplets, to groups of twos and threes. We were to go down to the hotel entrance and get a taxi, and we were to show them this business card with this name of this flower shop on it, and we would be taken to a part of the city where we had not been before. So many unknowns, right? So cool. Some of you are like, oh, that's not cool, but I love this stuff. I love the adventure of the unknowns. So we go down, my group, and we go down to the entrance of the hotel, and we locate a taxi, and we show them the business card. And he takes us to that flower shop in this part of the city we had never been before. Now remember, it's evening. It's dark already, and as much as we could, because we had a language barrier, right? The taxi driver was like, "Are you sure?" I mean, as much as he could communicate, this is where you want dropped off, and we were like, "Yes." So he drops us off. We take, excuse me. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, we had with us bags of Bibles, right? I mean, obviously, but I didn't say that earlier. So we leave the hotel, we get the taxi, we have our bags of Bibles. We're taken to this location where there's this flower shop, and we're dropped off, and the taxi leaves. So here we stand in an unknown part of the city, and we're on the street. Now, in the briefing, we had been given instructions. Once the taxi leaves and you're in front of this flower shop, we want you to walk down the street in this certain direction. And you won't go very far. It's like half a block or so. And there will be somebody there. He will recognize that you are Bible couriers. And he will direct you through a doorway. I mean, I've not been trained as a spy. I've seen the movies, right? But this felt so clandestine, right? And it was awesome. It was awesome. I loved it. And we did exactly as I said. We were dropped off. We walked down the street. Pretty soon there's this guy, and we make eye contact, and he ushers us through this doorway. Remember, it's dark outside, right? And we go into this hallway, and we wander back. And in the briefing, they had described this, and they had kind of told us what to do. But when you're in the situation, you're like, this is all new. This is all unknown. And we wander down this dark hallway, and we come to a set of stairs, and we do as we've been instructed, and we go up a couple of flight of stairs. And we find this door, this place where had been described to us, and we go inside. Well, I like to affectionately call this Grandma's apartment, because that's what it was. It was an older lady's apartment. I said earlier that we'd be taking them to a storehouse, and we did, but it also happened to be Grandma's apartment. Fascinating experience, fascinating process. And to think back, and I probably don't even fully understand this, to be honest, but to think back to the risks that people were taking, for the sake of the kingdom, for the sake of believers who needed Bibles. I mean, you think about the guy on the street waiting for us to direct us into a doorway. He's putting himself at risk in doing that, making himself known that he's a part of something that they really don't want happening. You think about Grandma. and her apartment. I mean, what if that had gotten discovered? What if they found what probably at times was hundreds of Bibles? You know, in our case, we were a team of like 12 people, and we carried Bibles in. Each one of us had a fair number of Bibles, so I don't know what the total was, but it was a lot of Bibles stacked there. And we're in her apartment, we're in her home. It was an amazing experience. We got to meet Grandma, and as you can imagine, it was a fascinating. I was my group of I think there were two of us, but there might have been three. My group was kind of in the middle of the pack. In other words, there were others that had left before us, and then my group went, and then there were others that came after us. So you can imagine the excitement in the apartment there as teams arrived, teams of 2 and 3 arrived with their Bibles, and we were successfully at this next point. What a great experience, right? And we're here, and people are gathering, the teams are coming in, and the stockpile is growing. And the next thing we know, we start smelling food. And we're thinking, no way, these people are going to feed us, right? We're in her apartment. It's just such a rich experience, right? And the unknowns of the travel to get there, the unknowns of the streets, the unknowns of the dark hallways, the unknowns of what is the apartment going to be like, and is this a setup? Are we going to be caught? You know, you wonder these things. We weren't. We didn't get caught. We successfully every team delivered their Bibles to the apartment. And once everybody was there, we sat down around this table in a very modest grandma's apartment, Chinese apartment, sat around and ate. And we ate and we ate. And a funny story to tell you here is we kept eating. And then finally we're like, we are so full, we can't eat anymore. And they were like, oh, you didn't know. You have to indicate that you're full by leaving food on your plate, and they'll stop bringing food. And we were like, that is so backwards, you know, from what we know. In America, you're taught to clean your plate, right? Don't leave food on the plate. And in China, you leave food on the plate, and that indicates you're full, you're done, and they'll stop bringing food. Fascinating unknown, right? And yet it was a very humorous experience for us. Had a wonderful meal, finished that up, and there was conversation as much as could be had with the language barrier through interpreters. And then our job was to leave and go back to the hotel. So we didn't leave as a whole big group. You know, we left again in 2s and 3s. Went back down to the street, and they instructed us, now you're going to have to walk further. It wasn't like crazy far, but I think we had to walk like nearly a mile to get to a location, because it's evening. Remember, I said it was dark out, and it wasn't crazy late, but it was getting late enough that we wandered down to this location where there would be taxis, and we caught taxis back to our hotel for the night. Bibles successfully delivered. And you know, they described further to us before we left the apartment that, as they said in the briefing, that even as we were there were people on trains from various parts of the country coming to that city, to where they would come to the apartment, they would collect Bibles, and they would go. And they would go back to their little towns and their villages, and to places where there were churches where people were waiting for Bibles. And we got word later, I mean, through this experience, but also through other times that we delivered Bibles, you know, we would often get word that, yeah, the Bibles made it. The Bibles got there. The Bibles arrived. Nobody got caught, you know. There were times when people did get caught. I'll tell stories about that sometime, probably. But in this case, the Bibles were delivered. The unknowns. You know, for us, Bibles are everywhere. Bibles are easily obtained. And there's no risk to us to having Bibles. The unknowns. It was such a rich experience. It was such a rich experience to go to Grandma's apartment and to participate in this process of delivering Bibles. Such a great experience. So, you know, I don't know about you. I hope that you can find application for this video. I hope that you can find a way to apply it in your own life. For me, it's a great reminder that don't take your Bible for granted. I will often open my Bible remembering that there are places where the Bible is not easily obtained, is not easily accessible. where it's unsafe to be caught with one. And when I open my Bible, I'm thankful. And I take a richness from that, that I wouldn't have otherwise. And I don't know what you might take from this story, but there is something powerful about the unknowns in life and the impact they leave on us. And sometimes it's not always positive, but of course we love it when it is, right? We love it when the unknowns are positive. But I really appreciate you listening today, and I hope that you can take this story of an unknown in China and Bible delivery and apply it to your life in some way. It's certainly been a joy to share this story with you, and I wish you all of God's best.